Why is it that the older we get, the smaller our world seems to become, even when our hearts still long for connection? You used to travel across towns for weddings, birthdays, or just a simple cup of chai with a neighbor. But now, even the thought of a visit feels like a mountain to climb. Maybe you wonder, why don't I feel like going anymore? And the truth is, you're not lazy, and you're definitely not alone. In today's video, we're going to talk about 6 honest reasons why many of us stop visiting people after the age of 70. Not because we are giving up on life, but because we are finally choosing something deeper: peace, clarity, and emotional self-respect. If you've ever felt misunderstood for staying home or guilty for saying no to yet another invitation, this video is for you. Before we begin, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this video from, and what time is it right now? Please share in the comments below. Even the smallest details of your day mean a lot to me. And if you find this topic meaningful, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss what's coming next. Why do so many people slowly disappear from your life after you turn 70? It's a quiet truth that most elders in India live with, but rarely speak about. And no, it's not always about bitterness, loneliness, or family neglect. Sometimes it's something much deeper than that. A gentle shift inside, a silent awakening that changes how we look at time, energy, and health. You see, growing old in India is not just about watching your hair turn grey or your knees ache after walking to the local market in Pune. It's about learning, often silently, that your body is not just aging, it is speaking to you. Every joint pain, every skipped heartbeat, every afternoon nap that stretches longer than expected is your body trying to negotiate peace between what it once could do and what it can handle now. And still, so many of us ignore that whisper, believing we must carry on for others. In many Indian families, especially in places like Lucknow or Coimbatore, the elder is still expected to be present at every wedding, every puja, to offer wisdom, to bless, to serve tea, to smile and nod politely, even when the body is begging for rest. But let me ask you this, dear listener. At what cost are you showing up? And when was the last time you asked your own self what you truly needed? It's not just about being tired. It's about the hidden emotional toll that even a simple visit can take. When you travel to someone's home, sit for long hours on a wooden bench, smile through stories you've heard too many times, and return home with your back stiff and your mind more tired than before, that's not social connection. That's silent depletion. Medical science has confirmed what many of our elders already feel. After 65, the body's mitochondrial function, the part of our cells that gives us energy, slows down. This makes both physical and mental fatigue come faster and recovery much slower. So it's no surprise that after a trip to your cousin's house in Bhopal, you might feel like you've run a marathon through the streets of Varanasi. And still, we hesitate to say no. We fear being called unsocial, cold, or even selfish. But what if saying no is not selfishness, but self-respect? Many elders across India are beginning to realize something powerful. That the energy they once gave away freely to family, to friends, to community is now something that must be preserved and protected. And that's not weakness. That's wisdom. Because after decades of living for others, you start to hear a new voice inside. A voice that says, "It's okay to rest now, you've done enough." Let me tell you about Dinesh uncle from Surat. For years, he would travel every Sunday to attend community meetings, sit through 2 hours of endless chatter, and return home more anxious than connected. Then, one day, at 73, he decided to stop going. He now spends that same time walking slowly through the temple garden nearby, feeding the birds or reading quietly in the sun with a cup of masala chai. He says his blood pressure has improved, and so has his peace of mind. Modern medicine and Ayurveda both agree mental well-being directly affects physical health. Stress releases cortisol in the body, which increases sugar levels, weakens immunity, and disrupts sleep. So when you say no to situations that drain your spirit, you are not retreating from life, you are choosing health. And it's not just the body that changes with age. Your mind becomes more sensitive to emotional clutter. After 70, our brain's emotional filter becomes sharper. According to emotional selectivity theory, elders tend to seek meaningful interactions over shallow conversations. That is why the same family chat that felt fine at 45 might now feel empty or even exhausting. So if you've been wondering, why do I not feel like visiting anymore? Please know there is nothing wrong with you. You are simply evolving. You are shifting from doing what is expected to doing what brings you peace. In Indian society, especially among older women, in cities like Chennai or Jaipur, there's often pressure to show up, to be available, to not say no. But who shows up for you when your body needs rest? Who listens to your silence when words become too much? It is time we start telling our elders this. Your peace matters. Your energy is valuable. You are allowed to say no without guilt, without apology. So to all the elders listening right now, those in Mumbai apartments in Kerala, villages in Delhi's busy colonies, you are not invisible. You are not weak. You are wise. And every time you protect your health, both body and mind, you are teaching the younger generation what self-care really looks like. Because the truth is, you've spent your life showing up for others. Now, maybe it's time to show up for yourself. In many parts of India, especially in cities like Ahmedabad or towns like Mangalore, older adults are still expected to be endlessly available, always ready for visitors, family discussions, and social gatherings. But what no one tells you is how much emotional weight those simple interactions can carry, especially after the age of 70. When you've spent your whole life putting others first, smiling through family drama, or agreeing just to keep the peace, something inside begins to shift. It's not anger. It's not bitterness. It's your inner wisdom saying, I deserve peace too. Think about this through the story of someone like Rameshji, a retired school teacher from Bhopal. Every other Sunday, he would visit his brother's home in a nearby colony. At first, it was comforting chai memories, old songs on the radio. But slowly, the visits turned sour. Arguments about the past, about politics, about who said what 10 years ago. Rameshji would return home not relaxed but tense and silent, his blood pressure often spiking without clear reasons. What he didn't know at the time is something science now confirms. Emotional stress is not just a mental burden, it's a physical risk factor. When the brain perceives conflict or emotional pain, it triggers a fight or flight response that floods your body with stress hormones like cortisol. This affects your heart health, blood sugar, even your digestion. And for older adults in India already managing conditions like diabetes or hypertension, it adds an invisible pressure that builds over time. You may not feel the impact immediately, but over months or years, it starts showing up in small but serious ways. Sleep disturbances, digestive issues, a persistent feeling of fatigue even after doing nothing strenuous. So when one day Rameshji quietly stopped visiting his brother's house, it wasn't out of disrespect, it was an act of self-care. His brother didn't understand, but Rameshji finally did. He realized that routine doesn't equal well-being. And just because someone is family doesn't mean they are good for your emotional health. In fact, many older adults in India are waking up to this truth quietly without announcing it, without explaining. There's another layer to this that is often not spoken about. Sometimes a visit begins to feel one-sided. You notice that the other person is checking their phone, often not fully present or not really asking how you're doing. In these moments, there's a subtle pain, a sense that you're being tolerated rather than cherished. And at 70 or 80, you start to understand your time and presence are not obligations, they are gifts. Emotional health is now recognized by India's top medical experts as equally important as physical health. Hospitals in places like Delhi and Hyderabad are increasingly focusing on mental wellness for seniors. Because when emotional needs are ignored, the body soon follows. So just as you would not walk 10 kilometers on a twisted ankle, you should not walk into conversations that twist your heart. Healing isn't only about medicine. Sometimes it's about saying no to what hurts you quietly and repeatedly. This is not about cutting people off. It's about choosing the relationships that lift you, the ones where you feel seen, heard, and gently valued. When you reach a certain age, it's not just a matter of who invites you, it becomes about who nourishes you. There's a huge difference between being needed and being respected. And as your body grows older, your spirit grows wiser and it begins to choose differently. In India, where joint families and social customs often override personal space, it takes courage to step back. But giving yourself that permission to rest, to withdraw from noise, to protect your emotional well-being is perhaps the most profound act of healing. And if anyone asks why you no longer go here or there, the answer is simple. Because you are finally going where you feel at home inside your own peace. There comes a moment in life, often after the age of 70, when time no longer feels like something you simply spend, it becomes something you honor. You begin to see each morning not just as another sunrise, but as a blessing that deserves stillness, comfort, and meaning. In towns like Haridwar or villages near Madurai, many older adults now prefer sitting quietly on the veranda, sipping their morning chai rather than rushing into autos or buses to meet relatives who barely ask how they are doing. And that quiet shift from doing what is expected to doing what feels right is one of the most powerful signs of emotional wisdom. You realize there are only so many books left to read, only so many walks left to take in the soft morning sun before the heat of the day sets in, only so many times you will hum your favorite Lata Mangeshkar song alone in your room. And instead of feeling sad about it, you feel empowered because you finally know how valuable each moment truly is. You are no longer chasing time, you are curating it. Let me tell you about Meenakshi Amma from Mysuru, who for over 25 years took a 6-hour round trip every month to visit her cousin in Bengaluru. The journey was always the same stories, same meals, same television shows in the background, and then the long ride back. Nothing was terrible about it. But nothing was truly nourishing either. Then, one day, she paused and asked herself, "Do I still feel alive after these visits or just tired?" She quietly chose to stop going and instead spent that time painting mandalas by the Kaveri River with a neighbor who shared her passion. Her energy improved, her sugar levels stabilized, and more than that, her heart felt lighter. What many elders across India don't always realize is that this choice to redirect time is also a choice for better health. Science now tells us that when we engage in activities that bring calm, joy, or creativity, our brain produces more dopamine and serotonin, the very chemicals that protect against depression, cognitive decline, and even memory loss. Meanwhile, When we spend hours in emotionally empty spaces, surrounded by polite tension or shallow conversations, the brain senses social disconnection, which can lead to higher inflammation levels in the body, impacting everything from joint pain to immunity. This is why many doctors at senior clinics in cities like Chennai, Kolkata, and Thiruvananthapuram now recommend joy therapy alongside medication. Not just yoga or walking, but painting, gardening, singing bhajans, or even sitting quietly with nature. Because when your time is filled with what replenishes you, your body begins to heal more gently from within. At this stage in life, your calendar is no longer about how full it looks, but how meaningful it feels. You are not being rude for saying no to yet another family visit that drains your energy. You are being respectful to the time you have left, and that, my friend, is maturity in its purest form. So if you're sitting in your home in Jaipur or walking along the rice fields in Kerala, and you've been feeling guilty about not attending every function or festival, please know this: you are not letting people down, you are lifting yourself up. Because sometimes the most important journey at 70 is not to another town or another living room. It's the journey inward where peace has finally been waiting for you all along. After the age of 70, something changes, not just in the body, but in the way you experience even the smallest outings. A short visit to a neighbor in Rajkot or a quick trip to the temple in Rishikesh can start to feel like an entire day's mission. You begin the day with good intentions, putting on clean clothes, picking up a small box of mithai, maybe even combing your hair with extra care. You tell yourself it's just a short visit, nothing too demanding, and you set off with a smile. But by the time you return, your legs ache, your back feels stiff, and your mind is silently begging for silence. This change in stamina isn't a sign of weakness. It's your body's natural way of saying, I need more care now. I don't recover like I used to. In medical terms, aging leads to a gradual decline in muscle mass and mitochondrial efficiency, which means your body takes longer to produce energy and longer to recover from physical effort. Even something as simple as walking 500 meters or climbing 3 steps can trigger fatigue that lasts the entire evening. What most people around you don't see is the hidden cost behind your presence. They may wonder why you don't come to every family function in Coimbatore, or why you skip morning satsangs in the neighborhood park. But they don't see how much planning pain and post-visit recovery you silently manage. A 2-hour visit can drain your energy for the rest of the day or even spill into the next. And with each passing year, your capacity to bounce back becomes smaller, not because you're lazy, but because you are human. There is also a quiet shift in how you view discomfort. Hard plastic chairs at weddings, loud music at birthday parties, food that's too spicy or too oily, things you once tolerated easily in your 40s or 50s now feel like small punishments to your system. Your knees might protest at every uneven step, your digestion may falter after a rich meal, and your ears might beg for calm after hours of noise. Rather than push yourself through these experiences just to be polite, you slowly begin to choose peace over pressure. Psychologists now refer to this as embodied wisdom, the idea that your body holds knowledge beyond your thoughts. It knows when enough is enough. It sends signals through aches, tiredness, or mental fog, asking you to slow down to honor your limits. And when you begin to listen not out of fear, but out of respect, you start to experience a new kind of strength. A strength rooted not in how much you can endure, but in how well you protect what remains. Take, for example, Savitri Amma, age 78, from Kochi. She used to attend weekly Bhajan meetups with her old college friends. But lately, just the drive across town, the long walk from the car to the prayer hall, and the uncomfortable seating left her feeling sore and dizzy for hours. One day, she gently declined and chose to stay home, chanting quietly with incense and a soft pillow beneath her back. When a friend called and said, "We missed you today," she replied with a smile, "I missed the old me too before I overdid it." Saying no to a visit doesn't mean you've stopped caring. It means you've started listening, listening to the wisdom of your body, the truth in your bones, the quiet plea for rest that only age can teach you to hear. And that kind of listening is not selfish. In fact, it may be the most profound act of self-respect and health preservation you can offer yourself in this stage of life. As you grow older in a place like India, whether you live in a quiet town like Nashik or a busy city like Kolkata, there comes a time when you begin to see your emotional energy the same way you see your monthly pension. You stop giving it away without thought, without return, without value. Just like you wouldn't spend RF 500 on something that leaves you feeling empty, you no longer spend your time or feelings on people who only bring stress, irritation, or silent pain. This shift, which many elders begin to feel after the age of 70, is something psychologists call emotional economy. It means you begin managing your emotional energy like a limited resource because it truly is. You realize that not all conversations are nourishing and not all relationships deserve access to your inner world. That realization, my friend, is not coldness, it is liberation. For decades, you may have been taught to smile through discomfort, whether at weddings in Hyderabad or temple visits in Varanasi. You said yes to every invitation, ignored insults, forgave without apologies, and stayed quiet in the name of keeping the peace even when your heart was quietly breaking inside. Why? Because being agreeable felt like your duty. Because raising your voice meant risking disrespect, and keeping harmony was often more valued than your inner truth. But something changes after 70. Your emotional battery no longer recharges overnight like it did in your younger years. You feel drained more quickly, and stress lingers longer in your chest, your breath, your digestion. That's not your imagination. That's your nervous system slowing down, a natural part of aging. And when your body begins reacting more to negativity, your mind starts asking harder questions. Why am I still putting myself through this? That question brings clarity. Clarity to say no to the cousin who only criticizes your choices. Clarity to let go of the friend who never calls unless they need something. Clarity to stop trying to fix family tension that has existed for years and likely won't change now. And instead, you begin to invest in people who bring warmth, encouragement, and peace. Let me share a story of Pradeep uncle from Indore, who always called his eldest son every Sunday, even though the call always ended in frustration, short replies, rushed tone, no interest in how he was feeling. One day, Pradeep quietly stopped calling. He didn't shout, didn't argue. He simply reclaimed his emotional energy. Now he uses that same time to walk with a neighbor who loves talking about music and shares old memories from college days. He laughs, more, eats better, and sleeps with a lighter heart. Studies from geriatric clinics in Chennai show that older adults who reduce exposure to emotionally toxic situations report better heart rate variability, fewer stress-related aches, and even improved digestion. Because emotions don't just stay in the mind, they travel through the entire body. They affect your breathing, your sleep, your appetite, and even your immunity. So when you say, "I can't handle this anymore," you are not giving up. You are growing up into a wiser, more centered version of yourself. You are no longer chasing approval. You are learning to sit with your own company and letting peace become your closest companion. And that is not weakness. That is emotional wealth, something money cannot buy, but something your age, your life experience, and your deep self-awareness have earned you fully. There comes a time in life, often after the age of 70, when something inside you quietly shifts. You stop chasing applause, you stop fearing disapproval, and you begin listening to a voice that's been waiting patiently within you. It's the voice of self-respect. Not loud or demanding, but steady, reminding you that your worth is not tied to anyone's expectations. In Indian families, where elders are expected to be endlessly giving, endlessly available, this voice often gets buried for decades. But when it finally rises, it changes the way you live, love, and protect your peace. This shift doesn't come with noise or anger. It usually comes after one too many times of being overlooked in a conversation or feeling like your presence is tolerated more than it is valued. It might come after a wedding where no one noticed your discomfort, or after a phone call where you said, "I'm fine," when you weren't, and no one asked again. When you're younger, especially in Indian households, kindness is often confused with compliance. You say yes because saying no feels selfish. You give in to others' needs while pushing yours to the back of the line. You serve tea at every function, hold your tongue during family disputes, and convince yourself that peace means silence. But slowly, gently, with age and experience, you learn that true peace comes from self-respect, not quiet sacrifice. Let me tell you about Dularaben, 79, from Vadodara. For years, she was the dependable one in her joint family, the one who organized pujas, remembered birthdays, and lent money without being asked. But after one Diwali, where her efforts were ignored and her health suffered, something changed. She didn't make a scene. She simply chose not to host the next festival. Instead, she took a quiet trip to Somnath temple, lit a diya alone, and felt more centered than she had in years. That moment was her self-respect awakening. And it wasn't about withdrawing from her family, it was about showing them how to treat her by how she now treats herself. Science supports this too. According to studies from IIMS Delhi, older adults who assert personal boundaries experience lower stress levels, better heart rate variability, and stronger immune response, especially when dealing with chronic conditions like arthritis or hypertension. Because when your mental space is respected, your physical health begins to breathe too. Many elders fear that setting boundaries will make them seem cold or distant. But the truth is, when you stop attending every argument you're invited to, you leave room for silence to heal what words cannot fix. You begin putting energy into people who uplift you, into hobbies that nourish you, into mornings that begin with peace instead of obligation. Whether it's gardening on your rooftop in Jaipur, listening to old ghazals in Pune, or writing letters to yourself in Tamil, these acts are not isolation. They are reclamation. You realize you no longer need to prove your worth. You already know who you are, what you've given, and what you can no longer allow. And once that clarity takes hold, the pressure to be liked fades, and in its place grows a deeper calm, the kind that doesn't need permission to exist. So if someone says, "You've changed," smile gently and say, "Yes, I've stopped abandoning myself." That is not selfish. That is survival. That is the wisdom of age finally claiming its seat at your own table. Somewhere after 70, in the quiet of your own thoughts, you begin to realize something gentle but deeply powerful. You no longer say yes to everything, not because you've become stubborn, but because you finally stopped abandoning yourself. For decades, you may have gone out of your way to help others, organizing weddings in Jaipur, babysitting grandchildren in Nagpur, or saying yes to every family function from Delhi to Cochin, even when your knees ached and your spirit was tired. And for a long time, you believed this was your role, to always say yes, to always be needed, even when it cost your health. But there comes a day, often not marked on any calendar, when the cost of pleasing others starts to feel heavier than the guilt of saying no. That's when you start choosing differently. You begin to turn inward, not to hide, but to heal. You stop attending gatherings that drain you. You stop being available for conversations that go nowhere. And slowly, you stop measuring your worth by how useful you are to others and start recognizing how